Hello and welcome to episode 7 of our second season of Free Speech, the Naturally United podcast where we talk about very important issues relating to Earth, the environment, space, and society. So today's episode is something that there is an incredible amount of controversy around globally, and it's also something that I feel like as a blog that is dedicated to showcasing the beauty of nature, we're a community of 1 million hikers around the United States who share interesting photography in national parks, national forests, state parks, and any forests around the entire country. This is something that hits home to us. This is something that I have a lot of the people in our 1 million-person community bring up to me all the time. But what I've come to realize is that there are a lot of different perspectives on this particular issue. So here's mine. Here's my perspective. I'm 23 years old. I am young. But in the end of the day, I've looked through the empirical scientific studies. I've looked at people from every possible perspective that I've been able to find on the internet and in person. And here is my perspective on climate change, how it will affect us, what it means, what it is, what causes it, what it's made up of, and beyond that, what is important to know going forward. Are the doomsayers correct? Are the people who say that it's fabricated by our society correct? And I think that oftentimes people have a tendency to say, oh, climate change is real. If you don't think that it's real in the way that I think that it's real, then you don't believe in science. And there's certainly a lot of empirical data to look at here, right? So there's a lot of things that we know about Earth that are objective, and then there's conclusions that we make based off of that data. So I'll start this video by saying my intention is for the future generations of Earth to have clean air, clean water, and a healthy planet with biodiversity, and I don't think that that's the direction that we're going right now as a species. And so that's why I'm making this video. So we'll start it off with a basic definition. So climate change is changes in Earth's climate system that result in new weather patterns that remain in place for extended periods of time. So this means it has to be over a few decades or a few million years. We're not talking a supervolcano explosion, which does change the climate. We're talking a gradual, slow change in climate due to particular situations going on. So there are three major causes and effects. So when we have climate change, what happens? Why does it matter? Why is it something that politicians bring up all the time? Well, first of all, sea level changes. That means entire cities have the potential to be wiped off the map. Then beyond that, plant life. Plant life is endangered. And then beyond that as well, mass extinctions. And this could even include human society. There is a chance that the environment of Earth is unlivable. We know with relative certainty that the oceans are going to be melted away in 500 million years. So knowing that, it's not like we know with certainty that Earth is not always going to be a habitable place for us. And so climate change is a very pressing issue because it limits the amount of time that we'll be able to live on Earth comfortably. So anthropogenic climate change, this is global warming that is caused by human action. And so this is what we've seen since the Industrial Revolution. We've seen a large increase in the number of particular chemicals in our atmosphere that is a direct result of the way that human beings live their free lives. And so we kind of look at the energy trade between the sun and the earth to represent what types of changes we'll see beyond humans. You know, without the influence of humans, what would the temperature of Earth be like? What is the climate of Earth? So here are kind of the factors, the climate forcings, the forcing mechanisms, the things that have an influence on the world and the temperature of it. So our equilibrium in temperature is decided by the relationship we have with the sun and the amount of energy it's emitting. So the factors that control our temperature, 1, solar radiation, 2, variations in Earth's orbit, 3, variations in albedo, which that's basically the reflectiveness of Earth. So if Earth were all snow, it would be a lot more reflective than if it were all grass or another material. And there's varying albedo for each material. So as we change the makeup of Earth, as we make, let's say, less ice caps but more water, we're going to be changing the albedo. We're going to be changing the reflectiveness of Earth, and that all impacts the temperature. Fourth is the atmosphere. Fifth is the oceans. Sixth is mountain building and continental drift. So basically just natural variations in Earth's land, Earth's crust. And then lastly, seventh is greenhouse gases. And this is one that you've probably heard a lot about in the discussion about climate change. So those are the 7 things that can potentially change our climate. So it helps you to realize we are slightly vulnerable to climate change regardless of whether or not we were the people that caused it. And so right now, and this is something that I think a lot of people forget, and beyond just forgetting, I think that a lot of people don't even know that this is the reality of the situation that we've been given as humans on Earth in the early 21st century. So we are in an interglacial period. The last ice age was about 10,000 years ago. And so what this means is that we are still at the point where we're still warming up from the last ice age. So global warming would exist whether or not humans were here. But what's dangerous about what humans are doing is that we're not only adding to it, we're making it unnaturally fast. We're potentially causing the planet to get warm at a rate that will make all of the aspects of our life that are essential, the water we drink, the cities that we build, all of our infrastructure, it will make it unnecessary. It will make our lifestyle something that with enough people on Earth, when you have billions of people on Earth and they're all consuming different materials, emitting different chemicals, that can be super damaging, especially on top of the idea that we're at the end of our previous ice age 10,000 years ago and it's still getting warmer from that. So Greenland, Antarctica, and places like Baffin Island in Canada, very far north on the northeast side, they are not typically on Earth during a normal period, but they are signs that the ice age that we experienced 10,000 years ago and even subsequent ice ages that we've had are causing a relatively cold period on Earth. And so that's why I think it's important to note that we are just on the verge of the end of the previous ice age. So the greenhouse effect is something that you'll hear a lot of climate scientists talk about. And in my view, there are really 5 chemicals that are the most important for us to know and understand that relate to the greenhouse effect, which basically is science attributing climate change to the greenhouse effect as a result of increased carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and CFOs. So, actually, the most common indicator of how our planet is doing is water vapor. It's the most abundant greenhouse gas, and it also has a lot of feedback loops that we can see cause the planet to get warmer. So that is the main cause of our clouds and precipitation. And so in a situation where there is an absurd amount of rain, you could imagine how that would change the climate of the Earth. So beyond that, there is carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide is what you'll hear as the most common argument for why we need to do something about the way we live in order to prevent climate change. So it's released through respiration, volcanoes, but also human action, such as maybe deforestation, our land use, and beyond that, just fossil fuels being burned in cars or any tools that we use that burn fossil fuels. One that I think is often overlooked but very, very impactful on the warming of the planet based on the empirical evidence we have is methane. And so it basically is the decomposition of waste in landfills, agriculture, but really more than anything, the domesticated livestock that we all eat, or at least eat the products from, or a lot of us do eat those products. They have an incredibly negative effect on the air that we breathe. And then nitrous oxide is soil cultivation, commercial fertilizer, and then fossil fuel combustion along with biomass burning contributes to the amount of nitrous oxide that we have in the air. And what we're seeing is that we're reaching unsustainable levels. And then chlorofluorocarbons, or CFOs, as I said earlier, are a synthetic compound, and they basically are regulated in production and release because they're so harmful to the environment. But there are countries with unregulated economies, there are countries that have traditionally been poor, that overlook this one aspect of environmental policy. So A stronger greenhouse effect will warm the oceans, it'll melt ice and glaciers, and ultimately increase the sea level. But what you have to remember is that as water expands, it takes up more space. So as it gets warmer, it will take up more space on top of the fact that there will be more water there in general. So what does this all mean? Our carbon dioxide parts per million has gone from 280 to 400 in about 150 years. That is a very, very alarming increase, but you also have to think there have been varying times of Earth where that parts per million could have been anywhere because of a supervolcano explosion or any other natural process. So when it comes to our response to what's going on with our climate, I think that there are three major things we need to think about. First is government policy. We want sustainable government policy. And this is my own perspective. This is how I feel like we should enact change with our government, with our collective society to combat climate change. I think this. Earth has its natural rates of regeneration. In a year, Earth can make X amount of any material. I don't think that we should be using more materials than what our Earth would provide us in the amount of time that we are living. So for example, let's say that within your lifetime that Earth will naturally produce 10 million pounds of coal. Then we can use 10 million pounds of coal throughout our lifetime. If we go further than that, we are basically stealing it from future generations. We are making it an unnatural distribution of materials for future generations, and on top of that, potentially running out of that material until it's regenerated. So that's number one. Two, the everyday life of human beings. I mean, if you look at the everyday life of human beings, a lot of people eat meat, they drive gas-powered cars. These are probably both things that A, we won't do, or B, will come up with a massive solution to the negative sides that those actions have. I think that if we look at the everyday life of almost every American and then were to reflect that life on all 8 billion people around the world, that our world will look very different. I think in America, in specific, we're living in a very unsustainable way that other countries will be resentful of years down the road. And then third, space exploration. Now, I don't think that we should necessarily go and settle planets before we understand how to treat this planet. I understand that. But we know our oceans are going to burn up somewhere around 500 million years from now. We know that Earth has about 5 billion years left. And if we don't get off before that amount of time, then humanity will end forever. So I think space exploration will be something that we should explore once we figure out how to live sustainably on our planet, because without that as the backbone of what we're doing, it simply doesn't matter because it's all heading towards nothing if we don't go elsewhere. So thank you guys for listening. I know that climate change is a very difficult topic to talk about because everyone kind of has their own unique perspective on it, but I hope that this video kind of provided you not only my view, but some of the empirical evidence that's caused people to be so alarmed about what's going on with our planet and its temperature. If you have any future episodes that you'd like to see, feel free to let me know. Reach out to me maybe on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, at Patrick Sapanic, and I will see you guys very soon. And beyond that, I would like to say, I know that it is very difficult to have conversations about something that is very dangerous to humanity, but at the same time, we are a generation with the power, using the internet, that has the ability to change the precedent of how human beings live and how we treat the planet, and I intend to use Naturally United as a platform to preserve our Earth for future generations. Thank you all for your time.